Carry on.
Hi, I'm Susanne Compulsive Debtor, and I'm happy to be here. Nice to see you all, although I only see half the faces. Most people are not, I don't see their faces, but it's okay. We decided to do step one together because we Sam and I are life partners, and we thought it would be interesting to do a step with a couple who have been together since we first started. So Sam and I started DA together in 1995. So we've been in DA for 25 years. So I'm going to say a little bit about, since step one is that we're powerless and our lives are unmanageable, I'm going to talk a little bit about what happened, what it was like. So Sam and I got together. We've known each other for actually over 50 years, but we had many gaps in between. And we got together in our late 30s, and having been in two other different programs. And even in our wedding vows, we determined that we wanted to be financially independent, but we actually had no idea how to do that. We just had this vague feeling, vague being the operative word, that that we didn't want to be dependent, as we had been, each of us had been in previous relationships. So we had the theory that we wanted to be financially independent. But the actuality of it was that we were uneducated, unskilled, and completely vague, and madly in love. So this was where each of us was determined to have it work. And as we went through our relationship, we realized that finances were tearing it apart. We were racking up debt as we went along. We were both of us learning how to be in a successful relationship, and but not doing a very good job when it came to finances. So we were doing a lot of wonderful things at the time. Both of us went back to school. We were kind of starting our lives over again together, and yet didn't know how to navigate being balanced in our financial life. So we had windfall upon windfall, and yet we kept accruing more credit in credit cards. I think that we were coming from a place where, at least I was coming from a place that I felt like credit cards were newfound freedom. It's kind of funny, since the DA program has the freedom in it that is beyond, a piece of plastic. But I'm from a generation that women weren't even allowed to have credit cards unless they were married. And shortly before my previous divorce ended, I felt like getting a credit card in my name was like a major source of independence. And so it was doing something that I thought would give me space for being able to buy something that I wanted, or do things that we wanted to do together. But as anybody knows who's ever had their way with credit cards, it's a quagmire that's impossible to get out of. So we ended up being in tremendous debt and didn't know how to get out of it. Creditors were calling, we were fighting with one another. It was just tragic to me, because this was the love of my life. And the whole idea of being unclear and not being able to manage money was really ruining our relationship. We did have experience with the 12 steps and with other programs, so that had some hope. But mostly we were just getting more and more mired down in hopelessness. If the creditors called, I just wanted to, was that 5 minutes?
Keep going.
If the creditors called, I wouldn't answer. Sam wanted me to answer. Nobody answered. It was a mess. So
5 minutes.
great, that's perfect. So I'm going to turn it over to Sam and say that was what it was like and what happened.
So my experience with Sam, compulsive debtor. First off, I just want to say I'm a really textbook normal compulsive debtor. So nothing particularly unique about my disastrous debting. My experience with step one was, even though when I got to DA, I was really familiar with the 12 steps, I still thought step one said we admitted we were powerless over debt and our lives were mismanaged. And I still thought it said that. And I, in my mind, I was coming to DA to become a good manager. And if I could just become a good manager of money, everything would be okay. And though I had never been a good manager of money, or I wouldn't be in DA, and I didn't really become a good manager of money. I didn't know how, and there's nobody in DA who could teach that, and DA doesn't teach that anyway. What I did eventually grasp in DA is that what step one says is that our lives have become unmanageable, and I really began to get it that it meant unmanageable meant can't be managed. And it took me a while though to get that. And that in a way, if it says can't be managed, you can just give up. It can't be managed. And it took me a while to do that, to give up and quit trying to manage it and hand it over to a higher power and say, I can't do this. And to hand it over with some serenity. And in part because I was just tired of trying to handle money in a way that I thought there was a right way to do it. But I didn't know what the right way was, and nobody was telling me what it was. I mean, my dad would say save money, but what he never said was how to save money. And it didn't come naturally to me to do that. And so I came to a point where I was not just willing to quit trying to manage it. I was actually, I became peacefully unwilling to try to manage it anymore. And I haven't really picked that back up. And so I would say for 20 years, I haven't tried to manage it. And the interesting thing is that from the time I stopped trying, it started going well. And in fact, it's never not gone well in that period of time. And I guess briefly what I want to say about giving up managing it is one of the ways that shows up for me is having some faith that I don't have to be concerned, and being able to say, it hasn't been a disaster in the last year, and it hasn't been a disaster in the 9 years that preceded that, and it hasn't been a disaster in the 10 years that preceded that. So there's a pretty good chance it's not going to be a disaster today. And that keeps being true, that it's not a disaster today, wasn't yesterday, and I'm confident it's not going to be a disaster tomorrow. And I take no credit for that. I take no credit for the fact that it wasn't a disaster yesterday. I didn't do anything to cause it to not be a disaster yesterday. Nothing. The closest thing I could say I did was if it started feeling frustrated, just reminding myself it's not my job, and to let that go. And I'm still powerless over debt. Um, I would say my life is still unmanageable, meaning,
5 minutes.
thank you very much. If I try to hire you to manage my life, refuse the job, okay? It's just unmanageable by any human hand. And I've come to the point where I'm just really grateful that that's true. If I thought there was a human manager, I'd hire them and they'd screw it up. So, yeah, thanks for listening to me.